In part one, we spent some quality time together as I went on and on about the concept of creating lighting contrast on black to show depth, shape, and form. Now it's time to get on with the exciting conclusion of this ever so poignant subject with the nuts and bolts of how the actual lighting was done on this image. I named this image On Edge, and to get On Edge up and rolling, an 8-ball was placed perilously close to the edge of the billiard table corner pocket. To heighten this sense of peril, the camera was placed down low to the ground so that it had to look up into the corner pocket. By the way, the catch basket of the table for the billiard balls had to be removed from this pocket so as to give an unhindered sight line from the camera to the ball. With the camera in place and the subject set to go, I fine-tuned the framing of the image, then figured out what aperture I wanted for depth of field. I settled upon f/16. Knowing ahead of time what the camera exposure is makes lighting and metering way easier. Every meter reading you take is compared to the camera exposure setting, which, by the way, represents middle gray. This lets you know exactly what the brightness of this light is and what ratio it makes. To create the red glow background, a 9-foot dark gray seamless backdrop paper was positioned behind the billiard ball. Now, you're probably wondering, why use dark gray seamless rather than a white seamless? Well, dark gray holds back more light than white. This really helps to minimize, if not annihilate, any light spilling back onto the background paper from the subject lighting. If stray light from the subject lighting spills onto the red spot effect on the background, the intensity of the red would be diminished or desaturated. Only drawback to the darker backdrop paper is to get the brightness you want in this paper, you need more light. To that end, a fairly powerful studio strobe fitted with a red lighting gel and a honeycomb grid was attached to a light stand, then placed behind and above the camera. Its focused beam of light created a red circular glow behind the ball on the seamless paper. To get the circular glow just the right size behind the ball on the gray seamless paper, I tried different honeycomb lighting grids over the light source's front, and I experimented with the distance of this source to the background. With the background and the red glow in place, I metered the glow with a 1-degree spot reflective meter, then compared this to the reading to the camera setting, then adjusted the power of the strobe until the red glow was 1.5 stops above the camera setting at the brightest areas and gradually darkening down to 4.33 stops below the outside edges. Next, another studio strobe was placed in front and up against the seamless backdrop paper. This backlit everything on set except for the backdrop. And here's the really brilliant part. The actual strobe is blocked from the camera view by the 8-ball, giving us a 2-for-1 special. 2-for-1 because the ball is both subject and gobo. I say gobo because the ball is blocking unwanted lens flare caused by this backlight. The brightness of this studio strobe measured with an incident meter at the back of the billiard ball read 1 stop brighter than the camera setting. You can see its effect on the table's green felt-covered side guards either side of the ball. Now on to the key light. To me, the key part of this photo is the ball's numeral 8. It is like a subject's face. And so with that in mind, I selectively lit the 8 and its surrounding white circle to make it stand out from everything else. This was a bit of a challenge since the 8 was such a small area to light, and any spotlights or grids I own would make a spotlit area much bigger than the ball. To that end, I created a miniature spotlit effect with a 1.5-inch diameter silver reflector card affixed to a small magic arm. The card was positioned slightly above and to the top edge of the camera frame. It captured and reflected light spilling over the top of the billiard ball from the backlight onto the ball's numeral 8 graphic and surrounding white circle. The resulting brightness on this small area was set by changing the distance of the reflector to the ball, as well as bending the shape between concave and convex until the desired brightness was achieved. Concave to intensify and convex to dim. Fine-tuning the brightness in this way with these controls allowed me to make this brightness one stop over the camera exposure. I metered this source by taking a 1 degree spot reflective meter reading off the white area surrounding the 8. Knowing that white with detail is 2 stops brighter than middle gray and that white paint on the ball is approximately this, I made the brightest area of the white read 3 stops brighter than the camera exposure, which equals a 1 stop overexposure. You might be wondering why I didn't take an incident meter reading. The reason is an incident meter is too big for metering in such a small, tight area. Even my miniature incident white dome gooseneck attachment from a meter sat out too far from the ball to get an accurate reading. Metering with a white dome 1 inch closer to the reflector card than is the subject surface makes a noticeable difference in exposure when the light source is in so close. A second 1.5 inch diameter silver card was also placed above the camera. It too caught light from the backlight strobe and redirected this light down onto the green felt below the ball. This reflector card was manipulated in the same way as the first card to fine-tune its exposure. At the brightest point on the felt, it was set to underexpose by half a stop and then gradate outwards into black. This was measured using a miniature incident white dome gooseneck attachment on the incident meter. The miniature white dome was positioned against the light pattern on the green felt and was pointed at the accent source reflector card. The billiard ball at this point looks more like a black disc than a ball, with the exception of the subtle green felt reflections on the lower regions. To put across its roundness in a stronger way, yet another reflector card, this time a rectangle of white foam core, was placed just out of the frame behind and to the camera left of the black ball. It too was angled to catch raw light from the backlight strobe. Its purpose was to create form-giving specular highlight on the camera left side of the ball. This reflection photographs with a concise in-focus edge. This hard edge identifies that the surface of the ball is smooth and shiny. The fact that the specular highlight appears curved creates a sense of roundness and depth. This tells us that the object is indeed an orb and not a flat disc. Metering such a thin specular is a big challenge, even with a 1 degree spot meter, since the meter's read area isn't small enough, and so it reads a little of the black ball as well as the bright specular. At any rate, with a few readings and a little fudge factor for the black, I got it to read 3 stops brighter than the camera setting at the brightest point. I was pretty pleased with this reflection. However, I did find that it made the ball look a little unbalanced, which made me feel a little on edge, especially since I had another 23 of these billiard shots to complete. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to soothe my poor nerves with a cup of tea, so I had to reach way down inside myself to find the will to carry on. With this newfound strength, I placed another small rectangular white foam core behind and to the camera right side of the 8 ball. Its purpose was to create a specular highlight on the top of the camera right side of the ball. For exposure, this reflection was set to the same exposure value as the previous. In the end, the second form-giving specular highlight took no more time at all to create, and so avoided any time conflict with the art director and with my tea addiction. And so, a happy ending to the On Edge 8-ball saga.